expressed on this podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not reflect the views or endorsement of any entity. Nothing being said on this podcast should be considered as investment advice. Derek is affiliated with Collab Plus Currency and may hold positions in assets discussed in this episode. Always conduct your own research and consult with a financial advisor before making any investment decisions.
GM everyone, welcome to another episode of 100 Proof. I'm Kevin Rose. I am joined today by none other than Derek Edwards at Derek DW at Derek EDWS on Twitter. How's it like episode 100? We're still screwing these up.
We're running on fumes right now. Is why
I know.
Dude. The industry that never sleeps.
And we got, of course, Sam as well at Punk9059, number one blur farmer.
Yes, sir.
Got my 30 points.
He's earning right now. He's earning, folks. Watch out.
He'll get you. He'll dump on you. I'm a little wacky. It's Friday, y'all. Like I'm kind of. It's been a crazy couple weeks.
Just
nuts.
Like totally wild. Totally. I mean, God, dude, it feels like every time we do these shows, we're all different people because like everything has changed so much since the last time we caught up. But this week in particular, it feels like seismic changes happening everywhere around the world. Things are going crazy. And here we are just finding time to talk about JPEGs.
I know. It's good to be with you guys during this chaos. And I got to say, though, Sam's Twitter account is depressing. Like he you tweet out these things where it's like there's only 30,000 active like JPEG buyers right now, or is it 30,000?
That was probably aggressive.
I didn't need to. Well, it was aggressive.
Probably aggressive.
I didn't need to.
You think the number was aggressive?
It's hard because I only have daily kind of ETH buyers, which is probably about half that. So then the question is, how many more Solana, Tez, other JPEG buyers are there out there? But I wasn't so much saying like this is small. It's just kind of putting it relative to Instagram for a company that is down. For those who don't know, I tweeted something about why Instagram probably decided to sunset kind of their NFT project. And I just showed a chart that showed 2 billion Instagram users and 30,000 daily NFT buyers. It's just in a time where they're cutting their workforce, you would think that some of the things that are more long-term projects might be the stuff that they would focus on later.
I just don't see how if you're Instagram and you're thinking of ways like if anything, your ad revenue model is all screwed up. It's with Apple doing all the privacy controls. Why would you not leave a team of, let's call it 10 people in place just to continue to iterate and explore this opportunity? It makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
Derek, what do you think?
I mean, I would be shocked if they didn't. I mean, I know that's the public facing press release news that they want to like put out to the world, like, hey, we're focusing on other things right now. But like, I would personally be shocked if they've completely scrapped the entire team thinking about how digital objects are gonna, play a role in like their platform for the future. The truth is the Meta product, like this Instagram product, just wasn't quite right. Like it's almost like they put something out into the internet. They didn't really know why people are buying or owning or like what the provenance is of collecting or why certain communities are interesting versus others. And I think they put together the product under, the limited research that they had done about how they may be able to shoehorn in their core product into something that was happening in this edge of the internet. And it just never felt quite right. And I think it would be a mistake to take the learnings that they've learned or like the response or the feedback that they've gotten from that product and extrapolate it across the entire opportunity. Because the truth is like they just didn't get it right. And they're going to need to think deeply about how they actually want to play a role in this ecosystem in the future that maybe comes from first principles and doesn't just try to, slap ownership of digital objects onto an existing UI.
When you say they didn't get it right, like I had a chance to play around with just a little bit of it, and then I saw a few drops that actually just sold out relatively quickly. Do you think they gave it enough of a chance? Like I didn't see it fail. Like getting it not right to me means like, oh, you pushed it hard and no one was using it, right? Like I felt like it was still pretty limited in scope and size.
I think tell me if this sounds right, but I think they had some amazing artists lined up to do drops on that platform, denominated in dollars, but you could connect with your Ethereum wallet to actually own the objects. But it was artists like Rafiq and Drifter and Micah Johnson, and folks that I think command a premium in our space. And I guess when I say they didn't do it quite right, I think where I just kind of getting an understanding of what they were trying to do and how they were trying to perform. I guess there's so much more interesting stuff to me. I mean, Instagram is a social product, and the way that they were approaching it was, we want to rent extract from the sale of an object, instead of thinking about actually how can we use this, the social component of this space to create a product that's actually way more interesting or in line with the fact that Instagram itself is a very social product, instead of jumping straight for how do we monetize the sale of goods. And I think that's what I mean by they didn't quite get it right. Anybody can create a marketplace and use their distribution for artists to sell work. I think the innovative stuff that you can start to do around communities or around ownership or around composability or around the social graph, none of that stuff was really explored by one of the largest social companies in the world. And so this is where I was just left kind of scratching my head. They kind of played around in the sandbox a bit. They got some feedback and then they jumped ship, which to me, I just that's not the approach I would have taken.
Yeah, same. I think that the huge miss here in my mind is that you have this massive platform of people that are creating content. Stop treating it. They went hard on the art market, and I think they should have gone a lot harder on the kind of just general collectible special moment market, which is a lot more akin to kind of I don't know, maybe baseball cards or something that if for example, if LeBron, breaks his record, right? And he took that record, a few weeks back and he, now the all-time scorer. If there's a moment where LeBron posts on Instagram and says, hey, this is the jersey I got in the, or whatever, it's some celebration of that moment that is a special Instagram moment. And he says, by the way, there's 10,000 NFTs for my fans associated with this special moment. They're $20 a piece. You can pay with USD and just have fun, and there'll be a secondary market for it. That would have sold out in seconds, and they could just enable that feature for these people to create these ownable moments. And I think that is way more interesting than saying, hey, let's put fine art on here, where you're expecting someone to pull out a credit card and spend 20 grand on something. It's that seemed weird to me.
Definitely a product mismatch with what their core offerings or their core network exists around. And so I don't see the Instagram pulling away NFTs as anything more than they just didn't understand this stuff, and they don't understand what's interesting about this stuff, and they didn't really have leadership inside the organization to say, hey, let's actually think about this from a different lens. Maybe it doesn't quite look like monetization up front, and it leans into some of the things that you're describing, Kevin, which is, what are the largest accounts doing day to day? How are they engaging with their audience? Can they actually create these moments of interaction around some of that stuff, which to me would have been a much more compelling try and thoughtfulness around how Instagram could play in Web3.
The two things that jump out to me. First of all, I'm Derek, you're using the word they monetize. My guess is that Instagram made no money off this. It was so negligible, the amount of sales they did. I don't think this was about them trying to make money. I think it was about them fitting into the model that already exists and not being innovative and thinking outside the box as far as how this model that already exists, that OpenSea and Blur and whoever are doing really well. That's probably not something that you're going to do very well, right? You have a totally different strength set. Why do and then, but the second thing, and this is something that I think happened a lot in 2022 and 2021, is there's so much buzz, so much money, so much interest in this space, around the creator community, around certain demographics, that people are we have it all. Let's get involved. But there are so few experts in the space, and there's so few people who realize how hard it is to build this and be committed to it over the long term, how to get people educated, how to deal with security and all that stuff. And I think a lot of people came in without kind of understanding what they were getting into and how much work it would take. And then B, not bringing on the people on board, the few hundred people who truly understand what has made NFTs work. I think of like Adidas is one example of a company that I think did decently well. And G Money was there from day one. They had somebody who was like deep on the inside of understanding this space. And I'm just thinking, man, it would have been awesome if Instagram got Derek on their team, got someone like, got the right people, the Kevins, the people of the world. And I think a lot of these teams like hired an agency. I have no idea what Instagram did, so I don't want to say anything out of place here, but I have seen a lot of other projects where they just hire an agency and they're like, okay, like Lord of the Rings, we're going to go make an NFT. And then that agency moves on to their next project and then nothing becomes of it, because this is a slog. It takes a long time to make this stuff work and to build this market, and I think to your point, Derek, they just didn't, it doesn't feel like all of that came together. Although they did have some, as you said, some very reputable artists, and I'm sure they had great people on the team. But those are some of the thoughts that come to mind when I think of a lot of these sunsets we're seeing from people.
Hey Sam, when you said Lord of the Rings, was that drop that had the really long fingernails? What was the one that got it all wrong? They had the 3D renderings with the long fingernails. You guys know what I'm talking about?
It was Lord of the Rings, I think.
Game of Thrones.
It was
Game of Thrones. That's what it was.
They both did.
God, I want to own that one so bad. Now it's like getting that misprint baseball card or something with the like really long fingernails. Like it was so creepy and awesome at the same time.
Not the Kevin Rose, the Kevin whatever.
I love that little Kevin guy.
Yeah,
I can't remember what that game was called, but yeah, the Kevin meme is one for the ages for sure.
It is.
Love that. All right, so let's move on to the Beeple event.
Dude, so massive amounts of FOMO from me, seeing all of the videos and photos come in over the weekend, while like we were in the middle of like this banking crisis and this USDC DPEG. There was like this complete on the opposite side of the spectrum, this amazing event that was happening at Beeple's new warehouse. What the heck was going on over there? It looked amazing. Tell us, walk us through. It looked a little bit like Marfa.
Well, I mean,
it was nothing like Marfa, you guys. It was nothing like Marfa.
No, but what was like Marfa was that Marfa happened the day FTX went bankrupt.
Right.
Yes. And we're all sitting there in Texas with art people, and like it was just this great event of people being relaxed. But I imagine maybe there's some of that vibe where the world outside is imploding. Just it was like the day of Marfa that FTX went bankrupt. But yeah, go on.
Oh my God, SVB. I was like, Derek, you and I were on the phone. We were talking about this. Like it's so hard to explain to people outside of the Bay Area or outside of California, like how big they were. Because like most people are like, I've never heard of this bank before. Like, why would you ever trust them with your money? And it's like, you don't understand. This is the banking, like the kingmaker, like the one that like supported Facebook in the early days and Twitter. Like everybody used SVB. It was just like such a household name and so intertwined into the fabric of everything that startups do. So it was like, it was crazy. It was a crazy few days. But anyway, I almost bailed on that because of SVB, but I'm like, I can't. I already promised, people that I would go, and I wanted to go because, he's going to throw something crazy. Might as well at least have a crazy night and go out and have fun. And I got there, and everything about it was weird and amazing and so Beeple, like he's so creative. So check this out. So this is his wristband for getting in to the actual event. And he was kind enough to upgrade me to a VIP wristband. So on the outside it says Beeple Studios, and then in the text next to it, and you don't even notice this, right? Because they're put on your wrist and you walk in the event. So it's not till he knew the next day you're going to like look at the wristband.
Taking off the bracelet, you're looking at it.
Taking it off the next day, right? So it says, okay, wow, very important person. Please do not murder. That's what it says on the outside of it.
That's awesome.
And then on the inside of it, when you flip it over, it goes, I honestly really don't think you'll need to worry. I would say there's a very low chance you will be murdered at this event, but I wouldn't take this off. Like that's like Beeple's wristband.
Those little touches, man. Those
little touches, murder touches.
So good at the details.
Oh, so you walk in and it's just a massive, massive space, and he's got all of his art up on the wall, and it's like it's beautiful, and it kind of walks you through the history of things that he's created. And his everydays are in this massive room, and then they open up this backspace. And it's like just nothing but video displays, like wrap around 360. Every single wall, every single inch is a display that's talking to each other that can basically send a graphic all the way around the room if it wants to, right? And so in 360, which is just insane. And then, so it's starting to get packed. They have a DJ playing, the music's good, like everything's happening. There's like an open bar, like it's a lot of fun. And then like weird stuff starts happening. You're like, oh, whoa, there's Elon Musk. And then it's got like a security detail, around him. And you're like, oh, that's crazy. Elon's here. And then you're like, wait a second, there's another Elon Musk.
Amazing.
And you realize that he's hired professional makeup artists to go and create like fake Elon Musks. And then you start to see like Beeple, and you see like there's other Beeples. So check this out. This is like multiple Beeples all hanging out. So he's got like fake versions.
That is so awesome.
How realistic do those look? It's insane.
Wow.
Which one is the real Beeple here?
None of those are.
Oh my God.
Yeah, those are all fakes. And it was just crazy. And it was so it was just nutty. He designed an everyday there, which was fantastic. And then he did a live airdrop where actually out of the ceiling, here, I'll show you here. I have the actual video here. I can pull it up. There was actual an airdrop. So you had printers. Look at, there's another Kim Jong makeup that was done. Awesome. Yeah. At the actual event. Just nuts. But he did actual laser printers mounted on the roof. And then look at that. So the people are trying to grab these printouts as they're flying down. So real physical airdrops. And then
what was it like? I mean, were just people mobbing each other trying to get these things?
Oh, 100%. Like someone pushed my wife, like someone pushed Target to like grab a paper. It was just chaos, but it was like no one was too aggressive. It was just a lot of fun. And but his creativity was like, I mean, you can see it here. Like you got, he had fake Mark Zuckerbergs walking around. And it was just like, you have to go visit this place at some point. The next time they do an event, definitely. It is well worth the trip. Charleston's a cute little town. Like it was just absolutely crazy.
Did I see, was he basically revolving around artists display? So like I saw a DK exhibition. I saw a Chromie Squiggle exhibition. I think I saw some other, like what was the deal there?
Yeah, so basically he would take all these artist submissions and said, hey, if you submit your artwork, I'll display it if I like it. And so he went and selected, I'd say there were probably 20 or so artists, something like that. And about every 45 seconds or so would switch to a new artist. And the art would just take over the entire room, right? And dude, when Chromie Squiggles came up, so I was like watching all these artists, and some of them I had never heard of before. I'm like, oh damn, I got to ask later, like who are all the ones he features? Because there was some really cool ones there. And when Chromie Squiggles came up, it was the only one where everyone applauded.
Damn.
Everyone started cheering.
Let's go.
It just goes to show you how many people love Eric. You know, it's like they were just cheering when the Chromie Squiggles came up.
Was Eric in attendance? Did Snow go?
Yeah, he did.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, he was there.
That's awesome. Good moment for him. Then. That's great.
So he was doing a really cool thing. I saw him, and I have it up here on my wall. 1 second. Let me just pull this down for you. You guys keep talking.
It is kind of wild how Eric and how Chromie Squiggles have just been completely non-controversial. Like when I think of punks and the ebbs and flows in public opinion of CryptoPunks and John and Matt, you know, and then you look at Bored Apes and the ebbs and flow of public opinion, like everyone just loves Chromie Squiggles.
Yeah. Dude, check this out. So what he did is he brought a Polaroid kind of printout with him, like machine, and then you could tell him in real time.
Oh my God.
What
does he pull it up on his phone, then take...
He pulled it up on his phone.
Oh, this is cool.
And then he typed in the number and it printed out with his little wireless printer as he was walking around. And then he would sign it, and that little QR code at the bottom actually takes you to the squiggle.
So cool. So basically you're getting your squiggle with a QR code that takes you to your squiggle, signed by Eric on a Polaroid that was taken in front of you.
Yes.
Dude, I want one of those. That's sweet.
It was amazing. Yeah, wow. It was a really, really brilliant idea. It was fun. So, you know, I think it was a fantastic vibe. Seeing people do it every day, of course, was just amazing. And if he does another one next year, highly, highly recommend y'all make it out, because it was great. Yeah,
these sneaky little NFT events, like the Beeple one or Marfa, like these are becoming like go-tos, I feel like. And I'm regretting kicking myself. I was chatting with Scott, Beeple's brother, about heading out there, and I just couldn't make it work this weekend. But I'm already kicking myself because it feels like this is going straight to the top of my list for next year. It sounded and looked like an amazing event.
It was really cool just to see his creativity applied to every aspect of it. Like the bathrooms were nuts. I'm not even going to say what was in there, but it got more disturbing when you went into the restrooms. Like there was his mind was plastered over everything in there. It was so crazy. Awesome.
Very cool. Should we kick it to some of the other stuff on the agenda for today?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we covered SVB. I know we were going to touch on that briefly. Glad that is done, we can move on.
It would be cool to chat about. I mean, like Kevin, you and I were catching up yesterday, and it was like we were both exhausted. It's been a long week, and I feel like nothing embodies the last couple of weeks, like what's going on with Doodles right now. So Sam, do you want to kick us off and kind of like talk about state of play of what's going on over there, and then we can kind of jump in with our thoughts?
And I also, I'd love to hear about like the socks thing, because I don't know, because I think the socks was what kicked this off, and I don't know much about it. So Sam, do you know much about the socks?
I don't know the sock specific story, to be honest.
Okay. I can say what the sock story is. I've been messing around with the product a bit. So essentially, and then Sam, I'll let you pick it up. The Doodles team, when they migrated the Ethereum project to Flow, and they didn't totally migrate it, but you were allowed to unbundle your Doodle with a box, and it would appear in Flow as like this disaggregated bundle of objects. What ended up happening was there was a marketplace called Gaia, Gaia, that allowed you to buy and trade and sell the unbundled components of what was in your box that was paired with the Doodle. And so there's this market that is now formed on the Flow blockchain, on the Gaia marketplace. And there's all sorts of cool stuff. There's socks, there's the coffee helmets with the price action on the goggles, like the VR goggles. There's all of the traits that were on the Doodles characters to begin with. These have all been unbundled and now exist as like component NFTs inside on the Flow blockchain. And one of the traits is socks. And there's like, I think 10 different types of socks. There's some white socks with yellow stripes. There's white socks with blue stripes. There's white socks with green stripes. There's hologram and holographic socks. There's super duper holographic socks. I think there's 10 different types of socks within the project that exists today. And Doodles made an announcement that said, and I think it was really just to get people excited about what's going on over in this new marketplace where all these unbundled units exist. They tweeted, if you buy or own all 10 of the different types of sock traits by this date, you will be airdropped a gold pair of socks in like the new Doodles universe. And so it was kind of like this fun growth marketing kind of a way to get people acclimated with, spending time on the Flow blockchain and starting to collect some of the stuff that's going on over there. And so that kind of tees up today's conversation. So Sam, do you want to take it away?
Sure. I mean, I don't know how that fits in, but I know that there was there's just been frustration, I think. I think there are two things at play. One is that there's been frustration that the floor price is going down, and, and a lot of projects have had floor prices go down recently, but Doodle certainly has. And then the second thing is, I think Jordan Castro, the founder of the project, has a little bit of a confrontational nature at times. He can get caught. He's not like doing the PR school type of thing to do in some of these situations where, people are upset about the floor and he says, well, just sell your NFTs. He's not leading with like the empathy sometimes that I think you want to in these situations. And, I just kind of got caught with a couple lines on Discord. One where he says like, we're not an NFT project anymore. Two, where someone was asked him to buy his NFTs. And he said like, why don't you just floor them and leave? Kind of very, and he said things on Twitter before, like, I'm going to devote this year to attacking the fudders, and I think that confrontational message met with the floor price going down has just created this kind of vicious cycle of misinterpretation and, virality around things that are, in some ways out of context, but in some ways just kind of reflect not really being quite as thoughtful with everything you put into writing. I don't know. That's kind of my read on it. But Derek, tell me what I might be missing there.
I think you hit it, and I think it all kind of came to a head when he was going back and forth with a community member. This was a few nights ago. It was late at night. It was very clear. I've just gone through the transcripts a bit, so just kind of like trying to get a sense of what happened. But he was going back and forth with a community member that was kind of like really on his case. And Poopy wrote, floor it and GTFO. Or in other words, sell your Doodle and get the fuck out. And that was like the final straw. And that comment alone I think symbolize a lot of the frustration that I think the tension between the community and the project that Sam is bringing up. And it basically just led to just a lot of vocal disappointment about how the project has been communicating, what the initiatives of the project have been, the tension between the original holders of the Doodles and the ambition of where the team wants to take the project. And it all kind of just came to a head with that comment. And we saw just kind of a big swelling of disappointment around Doodles. Kevin, what are your, I mean, you're the leader of a community project in this space. You've had highs, you've had lows, you've had all sorts of, I mean, you're building, I don't know if people realize like how hard you and the team work day to day. I mean, there's more than 30 of you guys at this point. All of you spend all of your time, weekends, waking up super early in the morning to build value and create products. And these things take months, if not years, to come to fruition. I guess what's your perspective seeing how this is going down with the Doodles project as someone who understands this stuff quite well?
Yeah, I think that if you're listening to this, you kind of have to remember that we should always consider all sides of the equation here. So I think on the collector side, it's really challenging. And then we've said this before, the NFTs in general are challenging because you have collectors that have entered your project at all different places and they have different expectations, for what that means to them, both like with, in terms of saving face, in terms of financially, like there's 1,000 different things that come along with that. And I've had people that have given me hugs at meetups because we talked about Fidenzas early and they bought a few, things like that. Or that, are stoked that they got into Moonbird's mint floor or the mint price. Right. And then you have people that bought at the absolute highs. And so you have a bunch of emotions that are unfolding as the market is taking turns. Right. And so that can unfold in Discord, and that leads to some really, powerful, intense conversations that can go south, right? And so if you're a founder in there and you're kind of working your ass off and you're seeing all this, you're really stressed. You're really, really stressed because it's like you want your project to succeed. You want to continue to build a great thing that people will be proud of, proud to hold, proud to own, proud to represent as their PFP. Like these are all things that you naturally internally want, but we're in a new environment that we've just never seen before. And that is one where we build in the public. And we build in the public and we're scrutinized in real time. And the expectations are really in weeks, not months or years. And so if you think about how traditional companies build, the Apples of the world, the bigs, like they come out, Apple does an event like twice a year. And then they goes chill. They shut the doors and they go back to work, right? And and so when they come out, it's completely buttoned up and it's a big announcement, and everyone says, "Okay, I'm either going to buy it or I'm not." And that's what they put forward, right? And that's the typical cycle for a company. Is like you get to shut the door and go inside and just crank on things for a few months. And that's not the case so much with Web3 because of Discord and because of Twitter. You have a channel and an expectation of communication with your audience that is much more real time in nature. And so, when I read this, I see what, he did have this post where he's saying that we're no longer an NFT project. That's a hard one to swallow if you're an NFT project. But he said that, we're not looking to build in public anymore and fuel that speculation. And so, I feel where he's coming from in the build in public piece. So I definitely know that this feels to me very much like it came from a place of being just insanely stressed out. I feel like it was just like somebody that had been hit over and over and just said, fuck it, get out of here if you're not the right people for this community. It was like kind of like that's what it felt like to me. He did come back and apologize and said, I didn't show up the best that in that particular way. He said, I'll take this one as an L in a follow-up tweet. So, I listen, I don't want to, I think that Doodles in general, I've always respected their community and their art. And I thought it was always a great project. So I'm rooting for them. I don't ever want to see anyone fail in this space. And so I would very much like to see, hopefully the right people rally and champion this project and take it to the next level, but I also know how frustrating it is to have that real-time feed coming at you, and it's not easy in these markets.
Sam, what do you think and Kevin, really well said. Sam, I'm curious, do you think I guess if you were going to talk about some of the factors that you're seeing, maybe more on the market structure side, that could be affecting also some of the spirit around what Kevin's describing, just from a community perspective, I guess, how do you think about that in relation to kind of where we're at, the macro setup, maybe some of the structural things happening inside of NFTs that maybe are making some of the emotional response to projects a little bit more aggravated during a period like this?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things that Kevin didn't touch on, but is a big piece of this, is that you have this constant price scoreboard of sorts, and I think that's why a lot of teams like to say things that I think is frustrating for holders, like we can't focus on floor price, but and I think holders get frustrated by that because a lot of, most holders want to see the prices go up. And that's kind of one of the reasons that they're here and they think it's a decent gauge of feedback. But, with Apple, with all these other companies, yes, you have your stock price, but your stock price is reflective of cash flows and how well your business is doing and earnings and revenue, which has a certain stability over time. Whereas in NFTs, your price is literally a reflection of how good is your product and your brand and your team make people feel, or who are the buyers and sellers and these random things. So I think there is that misalignment a little bit with kind of the long-term working with the fact that there is all this constant stimulus and feedback that the holders are getting. I think one thing that's happening now, is they're all, and this is just a very new market dynamic for us. The volumes are through the roof. It's, if you actually look at the amount of NFTs that are trading, we're seeing more NFTs traded than almost ever before. And that's because of all the airdrop farming that's going on Blur. But what's also happening here, and I think when season 2 started for Blur, which was in the middle of February, you had all these people who wanted to bid on NFTs because bidding on NFTs was how you got points. And, Blur had just dropped hundreds of thousands of dollars to people. Some people got over $1 million. And there was a renewed set of interest in Blur airdrop farming. All these bids were kind of all over the market. And we had a couple of weeks where I think the market was really held up really, really well. And I think what was happening under the surface there is that long-term holders or people who maybe held 3 Doodles, 3 clones, 3 Moonbirds were like, yeah, maybe I only want to own one. And I have all these people bidding. And you start to see a fair number of people who started selling NFTs into those airdrop farmers. And I think what's happened over the couple of weeks is that the airdrop community, the farming community, they got long, but there was enough liquidity that you could just sell it to the next guy, and it was never that big of an issue. But over the past couple of weeks, we've started to see the airdrop farmers be like, whoa, we're longer than we want to be. And they've just been dumping in pretty big size. And there hasn't really been anyone on the other side. So in one day, after the SVB news, one person sold 499 Moonbirds. To put it in perspective, before airdrop farming, the most anyone had ever sold in one day was less than 50. I actually think it was less than 30. There was no one who was dealing in anywhere near this size. And then suddenly you had one guy come in and sell 500 in one day. We just had some.
Sam, who eats that on the other side? Obviously there's not it's just other farmers.
I think that one of the big misperceptions out there is the idea that this is amazing. This is being you can do these and get out right away. What's really happening is other airdrop farmers buy them and then they ultimately have to unload. None with the 500 sales of Moonbirds, 2 people bought 200. And neither of them wanted to hold, so it takes weeks for that supply to actually come into the market. And that was on a Saturday and the floor price has gone down pretty steadily since then. With the Bored Apes, for example, Machi Big Brother, when Mando and OSF sold 78 in one bid, Machi Big Brother bought them all and I celebrated on my show. This is incredible. Someone just sold 78 Bored Apes and the floor didn't move. Well, 1 week later or 3 days later, the floor went to 58. It went down 20 ETH in basically, one day because the person who bought those 78 really was not a real buyer. And
is that still the case today, or did it bounce back?
It never got back up to 78, but it went down to 58, 60, kind of bounced back to 70. Now it's at 65. So sometimes this stuff can get absorbed. 21 punks were sold into a bidder just a few days ago. And, the guys who end up with this supply know enough to not dump onto the market. Like if you're long 200 Moonbirds, the last thing you want to do is give the market the impression you're selling. So they normally will wait and delay a few days. And then eventually, you might see the sales. Someone sold 500 VV checks yesterday. It was the most checks that were ever sold in one day. Now, we've seen people buy and sell 300 at a time. We haven't seen someone sell 500 with zero intention of buying anymore. And that's kind of what we've seen a few of these instances in the past days. So I just think you're seeing an acceleration. And maybe this is just late. Like maybe a few weeks ago, people had 3 Doodles, but only wanted 1. But they didn't really have anywhere to sell. Well, now all of that kind of latent sentiment that was like, maybe I'd sell, maybe I won't. Like, I have all these bids, I'll sell them. Maybe that sentiment is now kind of coming to a head because I think we're kind of riffling through the system and people are actually like realizing that the long-term buyers for these 10,000 PFP projects in this moment like aren't always there.
So Sam, what are the metrics you look at? Like, is there any way to do a little X-ray on some of these projects and say, what percentage of the overall collection is held by farmers or is going into, is seeing farming action? And then also, what does the blur price mean for the future of farming? Meaning like if the blur price tanks, will they just start increasing the rewards to kind of make it the same? Like what do we see there? Like how stable is blur farming into the future? Like, do you believe this is going to stay around for the next couple of years? Is this something that kind of churns out over the next, 3 months? Like, where are we here? Yeah.
So to that last question, I'll start with that. I think that it does stick around for a long time. I think we could be looking out to 2025. Now, is it going to be right now it's a business, it's like there are people who are like building bots and just kind of full-time focus on farming. I think if the token goes lower, I think as we go along, kind of the amount that will be given, I think it'll start to look more like credit card points, where it's like, okay, I'd rather pay with my credit card than cash. I'd rather use Blur than another exchange because I'm going to get 5-10% back. And I think you're going to keep getting that credit card point factor where it is enough to sway people to use Blur or, I think you're going to keep like their map, which isn't very specific, but it looks out like 2 to 3 years of community tokens going out to people who do the things they want. So Derek will certainly have more thoughts on this, but that's one of that's kind of, so I think it's going to be around for a while. The other thing I'd say though, and I think that this is important because I've done a little bit of airdrop farming just to understand it, is that I don't think it's that economical, but I think people see it as a game. Like it's a huge dopamine factor, and you can see how many airdrop points you get every 5 minutes. So you start, refreshing and seeing like, is my bid, what gets me more points? And it literally, it's just like a video game at some level where you're seeing your points go higher and higher, for bidding more and more. And I think there is like an addictive factor. People are putting tons of money into it right now, even though we have no idea what the economics are. We have no idea how much a point is worth. We have no idea how much listing rewards are. We don't know what gets you listing rewards. They don't tell you how many you get. We don't even know when the season ends. It's only like an abstract drawing that gives us that idea. Obviously, you have no idea how much Blur will be worth in 4 or 5 months. So it is really hard to get systematic here. But I think people find it fun. Like I said, every 5 minutes you see number go up, and that's kind of what dopamine's all about. Derek, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think Sam has hit a lot of astute points. My view is like if it wasn't Blur, it was going to be some other marketplace that attempted the same thing. And what we're seeing is incentives to get liquidity into a single place. And so right now, the people that are, acting as like, let's call them market makers. So people who are buying and trading NFTs and able to farm Blur tokens, these rewards, they're stepping in and playing a role that very sophisticated actors play in traditional equities. My view is that over time, the folks that are casually playing this market making role will be replaced by folks who are actually professionals and have been doing this for a very long time, and have the setups and understand the risk profile of every entry, of every exit. But my view is like structurally what Blur has done is incentivize a very tight bid-ask spread inside of one single place to allow to unlock like this liquidity that has never really existed for very specific types of NFTs, which is large set collections. And I think that is just going to continue to persist. There will be something like Blur, if not Blur, doing this for decades to come. And my view is like what the market participants in playing that role will slowly become more professionalized as time goes on and things get more optimized. But the casualties today are a result of those professionals not really being here, or folks that think they might be professionals and understand the risk profile of every entry and every exit, not really having like the tools or the skill set to really understand how to be a professional market maker.
The other thing I'd say is like, I don't want to, like, I'm not positioning what I'm saying as negative towards Blur. Like, I think Blur is just a reality of the marketplace right now. And I'm just trying to understand what's going on there. It's the thing that is unique about Blur, which is very, very hard to repeat, is that they have a $1.6 billion market cap that they can use to get people to do what they want. And that is very hard for another player to do. And when you do that, like I ran the numbers on airdrop farmers, and kind of across the board, every single one of them is losing money. So, and it can range from Machi Big Brother, who's down more than 3,000 ETH, to everyone kind of 2 through 15, who's down somewhere between 50 and 250 ETH. But that's okay, because you know that there is a $1.6 billion market cap that is incentivizing you to do these things, and that's going to fill in the other side. And then there are other things like, it was a great thing, I guess you could argue, that people got to get out of trades they didn't want to be in. If someone's holding, that liquidity was provided for people. One of the reasons that these farmers are down is because royalty payments are so high. The royalty rate is only 0.5%, but Machi Big Brother's done something like 30,000 trades. So the royalties add up. That's been money that's kind of gone from the token to projects. Like, there have been positives here. I'm not saying it's all negative, but I do think that what is hard to replicate is just how genius Pac-Man has been in building goodwill and getting people in the community to like what he's doing. And that is why this token has a market cap of $1.5 to $2 billion. And he has the ability to kind of create these situations, which are very bizarre, but which are pretty, certainly having a huge impact.
I'm curious though, Sam, when you think about that market cap, I mean, that's the fully diluted versus available supply that's out there. So you're kind of extrapolating that out. And also, how deep is that well? Like, it doesn't matter what the market cap is if there's no cash to back it up on the other side, right? Well,
I think they're giving out 10% to this season, so that's, depending on where I don't know the exact numbers, and Derek would know better, or someone, I know that probably, if it's not public, then, but I
guess what I mean is like, if someone were to take, let's just say $250,000 in Blur and dump it on the market right now, how much impact does that have on the actual price, right? Like, how many, like what does that bring us to? Does that cut the market cap in half?
It's been a very high beta token, so it went from, it went from like 120 down to 48 cents, but then when ETH started pumping kind of after SVB news started to appear to be positive, or even before then, Blur went from 48 to 70 cents. So right now it serves mainly as just like a high beta proxy to the crypto market. But we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. It's very hard to have a prediction for where this token goes.
Yeah, good combo here. I'll also say, just in general, like, this is very specific to a certain class of NFTs, a certain category, which is like these large collection, these large supply collections that have always had a feature of just people trading at the floor or thinking about the value of these things at the floor. So I would be remiss to not point out that there's a whole other market that's continuing to develop outside of the activity that we're seeing in Blur. And an example would be like the fine art and like the one-of-one crypto art space. And we're seeing a tremendous amount of activity over there that's not on Blur, but still signals that there is like buyers and sellers are meeting in these markets outside of Blur as well. And so like that I think is important to point out is, Robbie Barat, one of the lost Robbies, was sold yesterday to a collector, a very prolific collector, Mr. 703, for almost $500,000, 260 ETH on Super Rare. I know we've talked about the lost Robbies on this podcast.
Can you share a picture of that, by the way?
I would love to see that. I don't have it up.
Who did it get shared to? Who did it get sold to? I'll pull it up.
It got sold to Mr. 703. And actually, let me see. This might be the link from the super rare sale that you might actually be able to click on.
Amazing.
Okay. But yeah, I would say like we've talked about the Lost Robbies. I mean, for just to give a quick primer on that, and back in July of 2018, Super Rare was like 2 months old, and Christie's was having a tech summit in London, and they asked Super Rare to put something in the gift bags for like the 300 attendees that were going to be at this Christie's Tech Summit. And there's this great piece written by Zach from the Super Rare team. And so Jason Bailey, Art Gnome, and Robbie Barat partnered together to create these 300 AI-generated nude portraits for the event. And each of these 300 frames were tokenized separately and put with redeemable ETH gift cards with directions on how to claim these one-of-one tokens on Super Rare. And something like 30 people or 40 people ever claimed. Robbie Barat was only 18 at the time. And his work has gone on to influence a lot of AI and GAN work that's been done in our space and elsewhere. And so they called like the unredeemed pieces of this collection that were put in these gift bags at Christie's the Lost Robbies, because like we just don't know where they are anymore. So these things have become incredibly scarce. They're like one of the first markers of both AI art and crypto art in general. Robbie Barat, I think, was the first ever artist on Super Rare. Kevin, I know you're a collector of Robbie's work. And Robbie actually, for being so influential, hasn't minted in, 4 or 5 years at this point.
He's done. He dropped out. He said he's never coming back.
He said he's never coming back. And so like there's this huge momentum around the Lost Robbies and Robbie Barat and his early work as a pioneer of crypto art. And so this collection in particular, Lost Robbies, continues to sell at high amounts. And we just saw another print yesterday for almost $500,000 to Mr. 703.
Yeah, so think about where we are right now with AI art and prompt-based art. And now go back just a couple of years, right? Well, let's say this is, it's more than a couple of years now. It's 2018. And this is the best AI could do for a nude portrait. Look at that. Compared to what it could do today. That's just insane.
Yeah. Like
that just shows you how bad the tech was back then, and right? It was like the GAN was just getting started.
What's so awesome is we know that to be a certainty because of the provenance of this token living on the Ethereum blockchain. And this is the beauty of some of this early work, is like it really is like the official marker of how AI has continued to evolve over time, because we have these prints on the blockchain where people are minting, people are buying, people are trading. It just gets back to the fact that we have this beautiful technology, this trust minimized database that stores all of this information, and we're able to actually go back in time and see the history of this stuff 4, 5, 6 years ago.
Yeah, look at this one here. This is the landscape painting number 1, which is just it's so kind of eerie and just beautiful. I love it.
What did you say was total supply, Derek, of the
there? I believe 300 were created, and I don't know how many have ever been redeemed. I think it's under 100, but I also could be wrong about that. Things may have changed in the last 6 to 12 months as things have been.
I think you can sort by collection here. I can tell you in a second here. No, that's not the way to do it. Super rare. Sorry, no hate. Yeah, I'm not sure how to sort by just because you can pull them up here in his entire history. I could count them manually, but these are them right here, right?
Yes,
but there's no
exactly. They're all numbered.
There's a perfect
all
way.
The frames are numbered, and I think somebody in the comments will be able to tell us. I mean, I know 2 years after or 3 years after, only 12 had been redeemed, and I know more than that has happened since. Just as like the space has gotten more important, people like go through these gift bags from years ago, trying to find dig through their house to find this stuff. But I do think the number is still quite low and nowhere near that 300 mark.
Gotta say, these aren't my favorite visually. But I do love the story.
Yeah,
the story is amazing.
The story is very compelling.
Very cool.
Just another example of something we've talked about before, Derek, just the idea that provenance and history and value is something that so often happens by accident.
Yes.
And here we are. Yeah.
Here we are again. This is a great example of that point you made like a month ago, Sam. I'll also say it's not just this work. I mean, I'd love to get your guys' opinion on this, but I'm also seeing bids for some of like the Grail generative art stuff as well. We're seeing drops continue to sell out. We're seeing, I'm seeing the floor of punks both in ETH and USD start to melt up. I picked up a punk a few hours ago or right before we started recording.
Let's go.
There it is. So Sam, what are you seeing in the data right now, dude?
Yeah, I mean, look, punks got onto Blur, and the past week you've had 30,000 ETH of volume. A lot of that is recycling and kind of Blur airdrop farming. But at the same time, the floor since they got on has gone from 63 to we're pushing 70. So this is, we've been in the 60 to 70 range for almost like 9 months. It's the most range bound activity I've ever seen for an NFT, and it's not even close. It's something like 9 months since CryptoPunk floor made a 10% move over the course of a week. For perspective, Bored Apes have never gone 50 days without making a 10% move over the course of a week. And we're seeing that melt higher. I think that's kind of where it stops though right now. Like there's the occasional big sales. But broadly speaking, I think it's just a quiet period, I'd say, for things like Chromie Squiggles. You're starting to see some ringers, some gazers kind of sell a little bit lower than they have in the past. But I'm like looking at this stuff day to day, so I'm like, well, not much volume yesterday. I think I'm almost too micro. But when you look at the big picture, I think, you had such a huge run in generative art in 4Q in the fourth quarter of 2022. And it's been a little bit flat to kind of trending a touch lower recently. But, I think one of the interesting things is this auction, Starry Night, that Starry Night portfolio has more than 3 months supply of ringers, autoglyphs, a bunch of other stuff. And then there was that big autoglyph sale, which, Curated bought an autoglyph for $500,000, which was one of the biggest autoglyph sales in 18 months. That just happened 2 days ago. So a bit all over the place. I think one thing that's kind of interesting is like, no matter what the bear market is, high-end wine always has a bidder. And I feel like there is, like in our space too, like there is, maybe those prices go lower, but you still have awesome sales to talk about at the very high end. Yeah. I think like at one tier below, we are starting to see a little bit of a trending lower, but nothing all that bad. It's still steady.
I still love a good hoodie.
The hoodies are
punk.
awesome. Yeah.
They're so good.
They are awesome.
Culture.
And
they're so damn expensive though. Look at this. There's still $370K for the floor hoodie, and that guy's not that good.
If they were cheap, you wouldn't want them, Kevin. If they were cheap, you wouldn't want them.
If they were half as much, I might.
Fair enough.
It's just like
there
ridiculous.
You go. I think what's Sam, this just gets back to your point about high-end goods during periods of crisis. I mean, I think it gets back. So certainly agree with what you just said, but I always get back to this point where these economies around some of these collections are so small. We're not talking about that many units. We're talking about 512 autoglyphs. We're talking about 10,000 squiggles. We're talking about 10,000 CryptoPunks. And we're talking about 300 lost Robbies. I mean, there's not that many of these top tier Grail collections that act as selling points for collectors. When you think about the total addressable market of people who are going to want to store value in some of these things. So it's not shocking to see that like we continue to see these bids over and over and over again, even given like the wild volatility of our space.
Chromie Squiggles, punks, and autoglyphs.
All roads,
the Derek
baby.
Trifecta.
All roads, the Holy Trinity. They all lead back.
All right. Well, what else? We've covered the big sales. I think we've covered pretty much everything for this episode.
Yeah, this was a good one. I
think
we covered a lot. We covered state of play. We covered SVB. We covered, oh man, just all the wild last 7 days. So I feel like this was.
So where do we go from here in terms of like where does this? Any predictions on? Because this has been a bumpy road. Like if we're honest with each other right now, like what the hell has been the last few weeks been? Right? Like
yeah.
It seems it's a little, it's reassuring to see some of these big sales, and there's this like kind of flight to quality. Derek's holding up the punks market single-handedly by buying that punk.
Let's go, dude.
So,
put it on my back,
as long
baby.
as you just keep buying. Yeah, exactly.
Long-term buyer on the outside.
One at a time.
Talking about. No problem.
Just one punk at a time. But what has to happen for something to change? Do you think we've bottomed out, Sam? Like, what are you seeing?
Here's what I think is interesting in the market right now. And I think there's so many, there's such a great narrative for Ethereum. There's such a great narrative for CryptoPunks. But in the past few years, we have seen these just really kind of be liquidity proxies and risk on proxies. It's like when the Fed is super loose, punks go from 40 to 150, and then when tightening happens and the global economy starts to tighten a bit, we saw some contraction there. Right now, it feels like there's a story about the world being shaky and Ethereum being a go-to asset in a shaky world. The narrative that we hoped would hold up and didn't, it feels like it's starting to play out a little bit, like CryptoPunks as a great store of value when Silicon Valley Bank is uncertain about your US dollar deposits. And we're seeing, and we saw that, it was, we saw before the bailout happened, or I don't know if bailout's the right word, but whatever it was happened where deposits were guaranteed, you already saw Ethereum running because people were like, man, this fiat system there's a lot of chinks in that armor. Let's put our money in CryptoPunks. Let's put our money in Ethereum, stuff that we know is going to be around, and I'm very curious to see if we can get a bull market in our space and crypto assets and some of these kind of longer standing NFTs because that narrative's working out.
Yeah. There's always been this promise of a decoupling of what's happening in traditional markets and traditional finance with crypto, or if anything, it's supposed to work in opposition to those markets. And I feel like when we saw all of the banks tanking that day, I remember seeing ETH up and I was like, whoa, this is the first time I've seen this. Previously, if the markets were having a really bad day, we'd see, everything be down, right? Like, is that what you're talking about more or less, Sam?
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's if that trend continues, that's really fascinating. Now we have because there's always been this promise that, Bitcoin is the quote unquote digital gold or whatever, right? And gold is what people tend to, or traditionally have kind of bought up when times are uncertain. So this is I love seeing that chart. I obviously don't want to see the banks or the banking system collapse, but it was nice to see the ETH did not collapse when the banks did,
Yeah.
Although USDC depegged.
We're back, baby. We're back. It's USDC is on a bull run right now. I think I saw it 101 earlier
Nice.
this week. So we're melting faces out here. No, but again, couldn't agree more. ETH as a store of value, ETH denominated digital objects as a store of value. Like that narrative continues to persist. I wrote a whole piece about it for moments like this. I'm very comfortable in stuff that I know has no external dependencies or a few external dependencies as possible, that lives on, one of the most secure blockchains on planet Earth. So that's why we do what we do.
One question for you, Derek, and this may be a little bit of a slippery slope, but do you at all get nervous when your rails for on and off ramps for those currencies are under attack? We see banks going under that actually facilitate people getting in and out of these currencies.
Yeah, it's something that I'm thinking about, especially with the Silvergate news. Maybe we can devote a little bit more time next week to talking a bit about this. But I ideally would love to see the U.S. taking a more welcome stance towards the on and off ramps to blockchain based rails, and it feels like they're taking maybe a bit of an opposite stance right now. I think that will do two things. I think eventually, capital will flood towards those things that are censorship resistant and seizure resistant and exhibit store value like properties without external dependencies, which is why we're all here. The assets that we talk about often on this show exhibit many of those properties. But at the same time, for this technology to have the impact that I think we all know it can, it needs to be, regulators and legislators really need to look at this and open arms and work with this technology in meaningful ways instead of trying to curb it. And so I would really like to see a little bit more thoughtfulness from the powers that be, both on the regulatory side and the legislative side in the US, to start being very thoughtful about how they want to approach on ramps and off ramps and not throw the baby out with the bathwater in very misguided ways.
Well said. All right. Two quick little housekeeping things. Follow @Proof Podcasts. This is where you're going to get the release notifications for 100 Proof. our profile series, Sam's Proof NFT Daily Countdown. All it is just notifications of new podcasts. So it's a great way to turn on those notifications and you'll get all of the latest and greatest. Had dinner with the CryptoPunks founders. They listened to Sam's NFT Daily every single day to keep up with the latest information, which was an awesome thing to hear, which was great. And then also we had a recent drop that we did with Pace Gallery with an artist, Mika Tajima. It was called Archive of Feelings drop that it sold out, went really well. And we're having an event this Thursday, March 23rd for holders here in Los Angeles. You can RSVP through Token Proof if you want to come out and hang out. And if you hold one of those NFTs, you don't have to mint it. Even if you bought it off the secondary, you can just RSVP and we will see you there for that event on March 23rd. All right. Great episode.
Great episode, gang.
Talk soon. All right, that is it for this episode. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you would like to help us out, head on over to proof.xyz and click on the reviews button at the very top and leave us a 5-star review. Thanks so much. Take care.